Welcome, and thank you for taking the time to view Minnesota Housing's tutorial on preservation. Minnesota Housing's mission is to provide access to safe, decent, affordable housing and build stronger communities across the state by offering products and services to help Minnesotans buy and fix up their homes and stabilize neighborhoods, communities, and families. Minnesota Housing also supports the development and preservation of affordable rental housing through both the financing and long-term asset management of projects and developments. The agency has also pioneered a successful model for supportive housing that helps stabilize the lives of some of the state's most vulnerable citizens. This presentation will highlight where to find preservation documents on Minnesota Housing's website, details regarding the pre-application, criteria overview, risk of loss thresholds, project types, and dual applications. The preservation page on Minnesota Housing's website contains essential information needed to meet preservation application requirements. Minnesota Housing's website is www.mnhousing.gov. From Minnesota Housing's homepage and within the Multifamily Rental Partners column on the right side of the screen, select Apply for Funding. Once on the Apply for Funding tab, select Preservation, which is in the middle of the Apply for Funding ribbon at the top of the page. The preservation page contains information on the pre-application. It also has links to the Multifamily Customer Portal. All pre-application materials can be found in and will be submitted through the Multifamily Customer Portal. To access the Portal Resources page, click the Multifamily Customer Portal Resources link found in the Required RFP Pre-application section, or click the Multifamily Customer Portal Resources link that is found in the Quick Links section on the left side of the page. These links will take you to the Multifamily Customer Portal Resources page, which gives you step-by-step instructions on how to access the portal and when and how to use it. It also contains resources such as portal user guides and tutorials. If you are seeking 9% housing tax credits for preservation, a mandatory pre-application must be submitted by Thursday, May 2, 2019, no later than 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. The pre-application must be submitted in its entirety. A technical assistance meeting is no longer required, but it is strongly encouraged. To assist Minnesota Housing staff in providing more project-specific feedback, it is recommended that some materials be provided to staff in advance of a technical assistance meeting, such as the project workbook or risk of loss spreadsheets. The preservation page on Minnesota Housing's website contains staff contact information needed to request a technical assistance meeting. Following review and consideration of the pre-application submission, Minnesota Housing staff will issue a preliminary letter of determination regarding the project's eligibility for preservation points. The sooner the application materials are submitted, the sooner Minnesota Housing staff can provide the letter. The applicant does not need to resubmit the preservation documentation with the full June RFP application. Only the preliminary determination letter must be submitted. An applicant will not be eligible to claim preservation points on a 9% housing tax credit application unless they have received a preliminary determination letter that states that the project is eligible to claim preservation points. Preservation applications are evaluated on the following criteria. These criteria are the same for both tax credit and deferred funding applications. Does the project meet one of the 3 risk of loss thresholds? The risk of loss thresholds will be reviewed on the next slide. Have 15 years passed since the award of federal assistance, the closing of the loan that created rent and income restrictions, or the last placed in service date for tax credits? What is the preservation project type? Is it existing federal assistance or critical affordable units? These criteria and the documentation requirements can be found in the Multifamily 2020 Housing Tax Credit Self-Scoring Worksheet and 2019 Deferred Loan Priority Checklist, as well as the 2020 Housing Tax Credit Scoring and 2019 Deferred Priority Checklist Guide. The checklist guide also includes additional guidance for scattered site projects, in the event that you are combining 2 properties into one project or have a portfolio transaction. The documents can be found on our website by going to www.mnhousing.gov. Under the Apply for Funding tab, you will find application resources. Click the View 2019 RFP Application Materials for Reference Only link, and then click Common Application Forms. We strongly encourage all preservation applicants, even those not required to submit a pre-application, to meet with Minnesota Housing staff given the various criteria that must be met. The risk of loss thresholds remain the same as last year. They are market conversion, critical physical needs, and diminished owner capacity program commitment. One of the three thresholds must be met for a property to be considered eligible for preservation funding and for it to meet the preservation strategic priority. Market conversion risk is when the property may be converted to market rate within the next 5 years, given the property's physical condition and the local housing market. This can be evidenced by a market study approved by Minnesota Housing. The 3-year conversion workbook has been eliminated. The critical physical needs risk is when the housing assistance is at risk because the cost to address the property's existing critical needs exceeds the amount of existing reserves by more than $5,000 per unit. This is evidenced by the 3-year capital needs model and other documentation. Diminished ownership capacity program commitment risk is when the housing and the federal assistance are at risk given a decline in the capacity of the current owner to maintain the housing as decent, safe, and sanitary, or if the current owner has taken action to indicate they will be exiting participation in the federal assistance program. In either case, an ownership transfer to an unrelated party is required either at closing or within 3 years prior to submitting an application to Minnesota Housing. Diminished owner capacity is evidenced by documentation of foreclosure action, ongoing lack of compliance with lenders or terms of federal assistance, bankruptcy, insolvency, unpaid taxes and utilities, and other adverse conditions. Lack of owner program commitment is evidenced by documenting the following. An opt-out notice was submitted to Minnesota Housing prior to the property being under contract or acquired. Documenting acquisition or site control of a property through a PARIF right of first refusal, or documentation of acquisition or site control of a property with the U.S. Department of Agriculture, also known as USDA, rental assistance, and a maturing Section 515 mortgage where the owner has turned down offers from the USDA to re-amortize the mortgage. Preservation has 2 project type categories, and the points awarded are based upon the project type. The first is existing federally assisted and is defined as any project receiving project-based rental assistance or operating subsidies under HUD, Rural Development, NAHASDA, or other program. The assistance must have been committed to the property 15 years prior to the year of application. The program must not be scheduled to sunset or expire. Properties that have converted their type of federal assistance through the Rental Assistance Demonstration Program Component 2, also known as RAD 2, or through RAD for Project Rental Assistance Contracts, or PRAC, are eligible. Please note that units covered by a rural development mortgage, but which do not have rental assistance, are no longer counted as federally assisted units. For existing federally assisted units, points are awarded based upon the percentage of units that are federally assisted. Beginning in this RFP, the number of units are not counted in the award of points in order to prioritize properties with a higher percentage of assisted units. The second category is critical affordable units, which are defined as any housing with a current recorded deed restriction or income restriction at or below the greater of 80% of statewide area median income or area median income. This includes existing public housing units, including those converting through the Rental Assistance Demonstration Program Component 1, RAD 1, rural development funded units without rental assistance, existing tax credit units, developments with federal assistance that are not included under federally assisted, and other programs with restrictions limiting income and rents. Additionally, to receive points, critical affordable units must also claim and be eligible under the Serves Lowest Income Tenants Rent Reduction criterion. However, if a RAD 1 development has a project-based Section 8 rental assistance project covering more than 50% of the units, it is exempt from this requirement. Developments with critical affordable units are eligible for 6 points. A dual application is an application submitted with two financial structures and corresponding funding requests. One of those structures includes 9% housing tax credits. Most often, the second financial structure uses tax-exempt bonds and 4% housing tax credits. A dual application is required for any project with 40 or more units that is seeking preservation points for a 9% housing tax credit application. Refer to the 2020 Housing Tax Credit Scoring and 2019 Deferred Priority Checklist Guide via the link on the Application Resources page under the Apply for Funding tab. Scroll down and click View 2019 Application Materials for reference only. Once on the Application Materials page, click the Common Application Forms. For more information, please visit our website or contact Ann Heitlinger. Thank you for taking the time to watch this tutorial.